Ooh, okay. Hey, Ben.
Hey. Okay. All right. This is interesting. Hold on one second. Okay. Now we're working. Can you see me?
Yeah, let's get set ready. I'm sure there are people joining in, but we can take a few minutes to set it up. I also want to do a few things.
Okay. All right. Look, who choose? Hold on one second. Okay. All right. Well, we can do this.
Yeah. I think this is pretty good.
Okay. All right. Great. We'll do this right now.
Let's just give a few minutes for people to join in. Yeah, let's just give a few minutes to people to join in, and then we can start.
Okay. If we have a moment, let me see if I can grab another microphone. Okay. I'll be right back. 30 seconds.
Yeah. Sure.
All right. See if I can figure this out. Oh no. Okay. All right.
Is this good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's get started. I think we should maximize and make use of all the time that you have given us. So thanks for joining, Ben. For everybody who's online and watching this, welcome to this conversation with Ben. Ben doesn't need an introduction to the Indian students if the students from India are watching it, but Ben is a faculty at University of Chicago now, PhD from UC Berkeley, undergrad from Yale, and a top writer in Quora for 4 or 5 years now. And particularly for our conversation today, I think the most interesting thing with Ben, and very relevant to us, is he's been in the admissions committee for long, and he's also chaired these grad school admissions committee for many years. So that's the context that we have. The way we'll do it now, Ben, is first you take a few minutes. I know you have some understanding of students from India, and you have friends from India, and I know you also for many years now. I'm sure you have some understanding of what Indian students understand about grad school.
Yeah.
When we lost your video.
I guess. Oh, 1 sec. Let me check my network.
So we are back. I can see you again. Yeah, Ben.
Sorry, this phone is doing all sorts of weird things. I'm not quite sure. I'm getting my face chopped in half. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how do I turn it back? How do I turn it back? This is the worst. Okay. And that's not helping. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. I hate this thing. Hold on. Okay.
This is
At least
better.
I got rid of
Yeah.
that. It's
Yes.
a little bit better.
Yeah.
Can you see my whole face or just like half my face?
Yeah. So no, we can see your whole face. Just go a little bit. That's good enough. We can see your whole face.
To reach out to lots of students because I think there's some misunderstandings about what the PhD application sort of requirements and expectations are in the U.S. And this comes from, for example, here at University of Chicago, but also from talking to Indian colleagues in the faculty at here and different
So
schools.
Ben.
Yeah. Sorry, PK.
Ben, one
what?
second, Ben. I want to just make sure that people who are yeah. Just 1 second. I just want to make sure that people who are listening are able to hear you properly because I'm not able to get your voice fully. So can somebody who's joining the video just in the comments tell us how the audio is and video is?
I can't see the chat. Are they saying things are working?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. So should I continue?
So they're saying that it's working.
Okay.
You should be, yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Great. So basically, I think there's some of the expectations for the PhD application and when people should apply. A lot of students are under the impression, I think, or maybe just some, that you really need a lot of research and you really need research publications in order to apply for the PhD, and that getting a master's beforehand is always a good idea. So push back against that a little bit. In my years as grad admission chair and on the committee, it is generally the case that there are sort of two tiers of expectations when it comes to PhD applicants. And the tiers of expectations are really separated in the sense that if you are a fresh bachelor's graduate and you apply, then the expectation is significantly different than if you have a master's. So, what that, if you do a master's, the expectation in some sense is higher because the expectation is during that master's you will have produced really high quality research, often leading to a publication. And in that sense, that is not easy at all. But for the bachelor's, we understand that most students, when they finish a bachelor's, have very limited opportunity to get research done, particularly if you're at a school that does not have a big undergraduate research program. So if you're applying as a bachelor, in some sense, the bar is a little bit lower in terms of. So that's what I want to sort of get across, is that if you apply right out of bachelor's degree and you apply straight to the PhD, it may in fact be in some sense easier because if you go into a master's program thinking that you're going to build up your credentials, the credentials that you have to build up, the bar is in fact much higher for those 1 or 2 years during your master's. And so if you go for the master's program, it's fine, except it may actually backfire a little bit because when you apply after the master's degree, you will have to have achieved a higher level of credentials, publicational credentials, in order to get to the same sort of level as a bachelor's student who may not have had that opportunity, and therefore the bar is a little bit lower. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, that's my big point that I want to
So
sort
I
of get
think,
across. So I want to encourage students to apply early.
Yeah. Sure. Very, very
Okay.
nice.
Okay.
So Ben, now just generally throw some general points on just admissions, and then I'm going to ask people who are watching this and listening this to ask some questions. And people have already sent some questions to me. I will repeat some of those questions for benefit of everybody. But generally, what are you looking for in the master's applications? What are you looking for in the PhD application? Just generally throw some things, and then we'll pick up something and go ahead specifically.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, in general, I think when you're looking for these applications, you want sort of, well, what I try to express in some of these core answers is that, you know, if you think about it from a faculty's perspective, what we're trying to do is we're trying to, in some sense, we want the superstar, right? That's great. But also from a different angle, we want to lower risk as well. So, you know, if a student applies and they have a probability, a possibility, they also have a big probability of completely failing, then that's a very, you know, risky student to take on. And a lot of faculty, not everybody is different, everybody's different, but many faculty will want to minimize the really high risk students. So in that sense, what would we want? We want, of course, you know, great test scores and GPA and those kind of things. But more than that, we want an understanding that the student will at least do well. In other words, even if they're not a superstar, we want to understand that they have what it takes to do a good job and to get a PhD. So, you know, what that means oftentimes is when we look at letters of recommendation, we are looking for assurances that the student has the right mentality, has the right drive, you know, has the right personality, and really wants a PhD. So oftentimes when students do stop and not get a PhD, it's because, you know, they either are not willing to do the work, or they just don't care enough. Okay, so I think a lot of students, you know, have that passion, have that drive. They really want to understand deeper issues. They want to learn how to do research. So making that point come across is, I think it's important. As for, I know many students have this question, have this doubt of, you know, do I really want a PhD? And that's in some sense a difficult question to answer. You don't have to know for sure in your heart of hearts that, you know, I absolutely must have a PhD. In some sense, the PhD is designed to help you explore research and to help you explore what you want, and you can always sort of, I don't want to say always, but in many cases, it's not difficult at all to say, you know, I've done some research in the PhD program, and, you know, I changed my mind. I no longer want a PhD. That's okay. Right now, I think students in general are very conservative. They think that unless I'm absolutely sure, I'm not going to apply. I'm instead going to go for a master's. And I think that is not helpful to anyone, because I think you're shortchanging yourself. And you, of course, have to pay the cost of doing a master's degree. And then that's, you know, very painful for 2 years. And then if you do for a PhD, in many cases, you're not getting credit for those 2 years of master's, or the credit is not the same as the 2 full years. So you are also losing some time along the way. So that's a little bit of a rambling answer, but I'm suggesting that students apply early directly to the PhD. And in terms of materials, you know, just do the best you can. There's so many the entire application. Okay. Uh-oh. PK?
Yeah, but I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so let's take some questions, Ben, if that's okay. I have some specific questions.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
on my phone, so I can't see the chat. So if you could repeat them for me, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I will repeat the questions if there are questions there. But I'm going to ask people who are listening to the chat to ask questions on the chat itself, so we can actually take up as the questions come. Yeah, so one of the questions, meaning I think as you rightly pointed out, right, CGPA, LOR, my GRE score, and my TOEFL, all these scores matter. But how much do people look for? So one of the specific questions the students sent me is, what could qualify as a research during undergraduate studies, which will show up well in the application? What does research for an undergraduate student mean?
Right. So, things have changed quite a bit in the last 10 years or so, right? And it used to be that I think it was quite rare to see really solid undergraduate research. And even today, I think it varies significantly depending on the school. I think that most graduate admission committees are willing and able to calibrate. So the important thing is not to say that there is a global sort of single standard where we say you must have this much research and it must be, this type of publication in order to count as undergraduate research. But I think the really question is, what has the student done with the resources that are given to them? Right? So normalize for the school, for the department, for kind of the environment the student has access to. So, if they have access to a faculty member who is, prolific and publishes quite a bit, then we would certainly like to see that be reflected in the student's output, and hopefully they can have a publication. But if, the resources or the environment is difficult and it's not conducive to undergraduate research, then that's okay. I think people will understand, and you write down what you've done and you try to explain what efforts that you put in and how you try to explore the research. That, I think, is actually in sometimes more important than the actual sort of, is there a publication, where is the publication at? So trying to understand the process and what efforts you put in, that's really, really important, I think.
Okay. But Ben, the question is that, so you said what resources are available, meaning sitting in the US, sitting in the admissions committee, or sitting in other parts of the world, how do you figure out what resources are available to students, particularly given that, I mean, that's one of the important questions that I'll ask also about the different brands available or the tiers of institutes in India. How would somebody sitting in Chicago, Berkeley, all of these places understand what resources is available to me as an undergrad here?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We don't know. We have some ideas, right? So, I mean, that's why I think it is, in some sense, more advantageous if you go to a school where we have a faculty member that we're familiar with. So, I mean, obviously, if you're at IITD, then, we would calibrate and hopefully get information from PK on specifics. But in general, I think you can try to explain in your statement of research, telling us about what the environment is, if it is difficult, if there are few faculty who are interested in undergraduate mentorship, that's fine. But explain the sort of the environment that you're coming from and what you have to work with. That's really important for us to help calibrate us to understand what type of research output we should expect, and that would help a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, is it one takeaway that in the SOPs that I write, I should probably give a little bit of a background about resources and faculty that are available here to get a sense of what should I expect in my application? Is that a good strategy to keep?
Yeah, I think really setting the context for us, remembering that, graduate admission committees everywhere don't have the context. So explaining that to us from the very beginning and then helping us normalize that helps quite a bit. Yeah, for sure.
Very nice. So there are two questions in the chat. So one question is from Rohit Arora. I will just read it as verbatim, just like that, for you to for the student asking the question also to get the answer from you. What about the grades for getting a good college for PhD and balance between grades and research work?
This is always a popular question. You know, obviously you like to get everything well, right? You like to have really high grades and research at
Which
the
is,
same time.
yeah.
That's obvious, of course.
And a good LOR, and a good LOR, and a good GRE score, everything well.
Right, right. Of course, everybody wants everything. So, you know, if that's not possible, of course, in reality, that's rarely easily to achieve. You know, it really comes down to sort of risks, right? So you really have to figure out um, what the risk reward is. So what I mean by that is, you know, 12 hours in a day, and you do everything. So what things is get more value than you put in. If there's an opportunity, you think it's going to mean true and something useful, um, then, you know, there's more trying to sort of, but that's a trade-off that, you know, think that the research opportunity is great. I here assumes that you can, you know, make that decision and try to engage them. That's hard. We just can't. So project have they produced? Have they produced publication? Do PhD programs decisions and say if there's a director who looks really valuable. Part of this is to try to minimize. If you focus on A, you minimize the damage of that A and B. The sum is still optimized. That's the best you can do. And if it looks like the research experience might be really time intensive, but may not yield much because, you know, what you've heard from other students or what you've heard with records, then, you know, it's really just about managing.
Yeah, Ben. Yeah, so I think that it was a little cracky in between, but I assume people watching it just got what you're saying. So another question that was there also was that I think this you kind of answered. I think another question which is generally also popping up many times is this: for master's admission, is there any difference between the scores of, let's take 320 versus 325 versus 330 versus 335, right? I think there's a small difference between GRE scores. I mean, does it make any difference in the real outcome of the admissions?
I think the masters is very difficult to judge, right? Because at different departments, the master selection program is the process is very different. In fact, across different departments, the definition of a master is different. So that's why I always, depending on the department, can be completely different. Some are professional programs for people who already are working in industry. Some are targeted that are so you take some classes, you get a degree, you're done. Off to go to industry, and the mission in terms of you know what we look at when is one for sure the math as possible. Beyond that, I think a little bit of so percentile, when the normalized percentile might be so much farming and the different things they have. So I think I mentioned in one course, for that example, when I met, every year we test for some 900,000 applications at PhD. And so you really have to look at the individual program. It's almost impossible to do it from the outside.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, and I'm just going to check with people who are online. I hope the voice is okay for people listening. It's cracking a bit for me, but nobody is complaining until now, so I would assume that the voice is okay for people listening to this conversation. So another question, Ben, which is on the chat is, so let's take that I apply, I get into a PhD program, but then after some time I realized that PhD is not cut out for me. Well, what is the general things? How common is this? What happens in this situation? How do I, as a student, manage it? What are my options?
Yeah, when I was undergraduate, that I'm at different, I'm not sure. What do I do? I always say, apply for the PhD, because as an undergraduate, the PhD teaches you things about how to do technical problems. There's just not enough time to really that. I think most of them just want to say, small. It's okay. I really think it's right for me, and I'm not very good at it. And I want to many will help you manage the master's degree, because almost every PhD program has, and so mean in almost every so we're really good. So, want to see that happen. We want to make sure that students who come in really understand the PhD and hopefully stay and complete it. But if they understand what the PhD is and they decide not to do it, that's quite okay. I've had students I have had one student who was exceptional. He was a really smart guy, but he just was not, well tuned for PhD. And so he would do great at sort of building systems and so on, but thinking about problems in a certain way was really hard for him. So I said, look, you're such a talented guy, but it's clear that your talents lead you in this direction. You don't need to force it. And so he ended up, very happily finishing a master's in 2 years and going off. And now he's already, I think, a manager at Google, and he's really doing well. So it's okay. We want, what's best for the students, and nobody's going to force you to say, oh no, you came into PhD, you must stay for 5 or 6 years or whatever. No, we want what's best for the student. So if the student decides that this is really, what their decision is, then that's okay. Then we help them achieve what their goals are. That's our job.
Right. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's definitely right. At the end of the day, the student has to understand what his or skills is, where their heart is, and definitely work with the kind of advisor and figuring it out what it is that he or she wants to do. So next question, Ben, in terms of just looking at what kind of schools to apply, and then what kind of how to pick advisors. Again, these are two common questions
Of
that you
course.
will have heard
Yep.
about, but picking your brain on which schools and which advisors.
Yeah. They're great questions. So I think really applying which schools you apply to really depends a lot on your own circumstance. How many schools can you apply to without going crazy? One of the things that you should consider is that some schools will give you a application fee waiver if you request it. So that if financial issues are concerned, and these things are not cheap, I know they add up certainly. And if you apply to a bunch,
Definitely,
then
they're not cheap from India.
yeah, well, I mean, even here in the U.S., I mean, I've seen some of these application fees; they're kind of ridiculous. So I totally understand that, and I think it's worthwhile contacting the department to see if you can get a fee waiver. In many cases, that will
Mhm.
happen. Um, so that will help a little bit, and it depends on how many schools you can reasonably apply to. What you want to do, of course, you want to uh, really minimize getting, but you also want to have some slots assigned to your sort of dream schools, right? So I would advise you to talk to friends who've applied before, talk to faculty, hopefully, faculty who are well informed, and then, spread out. So you get some, in your dream school range, some that are reasonably likely, and then some that are sort of backups. But I think one thing to remember is that every department is different, and so you can't say if I put if these are your dream schools, then you say I'm going to have the same probability at all of them. That won't be the case. There might be a dream school that will for sure absolutely want you because you're the person that they're interested in that year. That's entirely possible. So don't give up on dream schools and the really higher end schools. At the same time, it's also possible that the luck work against you and other applications that are similar to you, that same year at a particular school are many, and so you get drowned by a crowd of similar looking applications. That's also possible. So you want to sort of have some higher range, and then have some backups as well. So try to spread it out. That would be my suggestion. In terms of
Sure.
what which specific schools, I think within a particular range, I would say look at schools that you think have a good chance of having a strong faculty advisor for you, right? So if you can narrow down your research interest into maybe two, maybe three broad areas, then I would say look at strength in that particular area. Of course, overall reputation is important. That's very important. But you want to make sure that if you go to a school, right, that there is a good advisor for you. Some schools are fairly small. Particularly some of the Ivy schools are somewhat small. They can be very good in their own specializations, but I've known a number of students who go to a particular smaller program and then having to either change their research direction or change their mind and say, instead of graphics, I want to focus a little bit more on machine learning. And then there's not enough faculty in that space to advise them. And then they're sort of out of luck. They either have to change their direction again, or they have to basically transfer. And you don't want that. So try to think about that.
Hmm.
In that sense, a little bit of a medium-sized program or a bigger program is safer. But you want top faculty as your advisor. You don't want someone who's just hanging around and you know taking a salary and not doing much, right? So I think in this sense, what you want to do is you want to look at productivity. You want to look at things like csrankings.org, where you can very quickly see within any department who are the people who are really producing top research, right? It's not perfect, but it's as good as we have right now in terms of getting a quantifiable measure of how productive each faculty is in their particular research area, right? So that's probably the best we can do. I think try to look at the broad categories of different reputations, and then within each broad bucket, try to target the schools that have very productive faculty in the areas that you're most interested
in. That's perfect. So one thing I did not know this, Ben, that you can actually ask for the application waiver. That's interesting. Is it very common that students ask, or is it buried somewhere in the website that somebody has to dig it to do it?
It's not very commonly known, which I think is a shame, because it's absolutely there as a resource, and so that's why I think people should actually make use of it. So that's what I think is that I'm trying to get more people to understand that it is available, particularly if there is hardship. A lot of students don't have the money to apply to 10, 15 schools when each one is like $100 US. That's too much.
Yeah. So I think one of the questions Nilesh has asked, so let me just clarify. Rohit, I hope you got the answer that question you were asking. Rohit's question was answered. Dheeraj, I hope you got your answer, conversion from PhD to master's. Varnit, I hope your question also was answered a little bit, where this course is, how does it matter? So now let's take the question of Nilesh, Ben. The question is, how important is to have research publication in the same area as one wishes to apply for PhD? Which is, I have a publication in, the question is, how important is to have the research publication in the same area as one wishes to apply for PhD? Meaning, I want to apply to you for PhD, but I have a publication in, let's take, an area which you don't work on.
I see.
Can I still apply to you?
Right, sure, of course. I think, to be honest, undergraduate research is really, it's a great way to show potential, but it is in no way sort of limiting in terms of what research you can go into, right? So, we understand that. We understand that at different schools, there are different faculty who are productive in different research areas, and so as a student, undergraduate student, you don't always, it's not like you can choose from any faculty in the world to